Back in October of last year, I had to purchase some veneer off my usual supplier. I didn't need a lot, I just had to buy a few sheets for a desk I made last year. Except, as you can see here, I bought so much more than what I needed because I saw all of these beautiful pieces of veneer from exotic hardwood and burls, and every time it was only just a few euros for one sheet. So I kept adding and adding to my cart, and when I went to check out, well, it all added up to about 260 euros, which is quite a lot. But this wasn't just a random on the fly purchase. I had plans to make some products to add on my website and have them ready for Christmas. I wanted to make something simple and relatively easy to make so I could sell them at a reasonable price. And also, I wanted it to be something that most people could use in their house. Like, if you would receive this as a gift, you would know what to do with it. As I'm posting this video, it's now early July, and I wish I could say I am 6 months ahead of time for this year's coming Christmas. But I'm not very good at planning things and keeping a schedule, so the true story is that I'm 6 months too late. I originally wanted to have them ready for last year's Christmas, but due to a combination of a few things like having other projects to work on, some of them had a tight deadline, then honestly a lot of procrastinating, going outside on hikes, climbing instead of working, and also underestimating the amount of time it would need me to complete all of these. Well, all of that adding up made it that I was gonna be unable to finish it for Christmas, and by that time I then was not in a hurry anymore to finish them. So I again set it aside for quite a while before I worked on them again and finished them. Me making this was also an excuse to buy this vacuum press I wanted to have for many years now. A good vacuum bag system like this is quite hard to find where I live, and so it's quite expensive. So this product I hope will be able to cover the cost of it. I think this veneer is probably one of my favorites. A single piece doesn't look that good, but if I take two and do a book match, suddenly look at this. It looks like a tree on fire or something. It's amazing. But I cannot glue this directly on the substrate like this. It's way too dry and wrinkly. It would break everywhere. So before I can glue them on the substrate, I need to flatten this veneer and make it more workable. To flatten these pieces, I soaked them in a solution of water and wood glue and acetone. Then I clamped them flat with pieces of window screen in between them so they don't stick to one another, and some pieces of newspaper to help absorb the moisture back and have them drying flat. After a couple of days of drying and a few cycles changing the paper, the veneer is now nice and flat and dry, but not too dry enough that it will just crack. This specific wood is called Weinmannia trichosperma. Although that's the scientific name, the common name is Tineo. And before purchasing this veneer, I had never heard of it. So apparently it comes mainly from South America, mainly Chile and Argentina. And that is what's amazing about working with veneer, is that you are able to work with wood that you've never heard of for a price that is, well, ridiculously low. For example, one sheet of this wood cost me 5 euros, even though this is considered a exotic expensive hardwood. For this one, I used two sheets that I taped together to form a book match pattern. But for all of the others, I just simply glued one piece of one species on a piece of MDF, and that was about as much work as I wanted to put into them because I'm not trying to make marquetry or anything complicated like this. I just want to showcase the real natural beauty of a single piece of wood. I did all of the rest off camera because it's the same process every time, and Every time I put one into the bag, I have to wait half a day. So I was doing other stuff in the meantime. Once this one was out of the bag, I removed all of the veneer tape, and on the front side, it was an easy job. I used good veneer tape, but on the back, I had an old roll of cheap veneer tape, and I regretted it using this one because even though it's cheap, it's a nightmare to remove, and so it's not worth it. Then I trimmed them all square and to dimensions. Here you can see some of the other woods I used. This is camphor burl. This one is US walnut burl. And this one is tulip wood. On this one I have a little crack here. I've got some offcuts and I'm gonna try to make a patch. Hopefully it will be not too visible. I cleaned it up with an X-Acto knife and a chisel, then sanding the edges to a bevel so I could clamp another piece of veneer to it using some sawdust and foam to nicely make it conform to the shape. On this one I have a little hole in the veneer here. Luckily I've got these offcuts from when I cut it to size, and I think if I cut a plug here it will match really nicely. Here is the previous repair with the walnut one after I removed the clamp, and I did a sanding, then I sanded it flat, and it's time to see if it worked. Okay, can you spot where the repair was? And there it is. I think I did a pretty good job, but I have to wait and see how it will look like with the finish on. Now I needed to do something about the edges. So I'm going to make a very slim frame. So these can be hanged like picture frames. I'm gonna use this piece of walnut to make them. And for these three, I have another idea of what I can make with them. More on that later. Hopefully by now it's pretty clear what I'm making. I don't know what the word would be to call these things, like picture frames or paintings, but it will simply be something you hang up your wall that showcases a very beautiful and unique piece of wood. For someone wanting to have some beautiful pieces of wood in their home but not having a very big budget, I think that's a pretty good idea because usually expensive wood comes with expensive furniture. If that's something that sounds good to you and you are interested, you can check out my website, and if you're not, well, keep watching because later in this video I'm gonna be making another product with veneers like this, and I think it's got much more potential. Before I start adding the trim I just cut, I needed to do some sanding. Now I've got to be careful when sanding these because it's a very thin layer of wood. I sanded these and it worked out with no problem. With a light sanding, there's still plenty of wood left. Except all wood aren't the same density. And oops! I was sanding this one and this one isn't sanded yet. As you can see, there's this even wavy pattern here, which I thought was some marks left over from the pressing. But turns out it's actually just the wood itself. These marks are from the tree. Unfortunately, on this, I tried to get rid of it by sanding a little bit more, but as you can see, I got through it and now you can see the MDF coming through. So I guess this one is now trash. I don't know. But yeah, you gotta be extra careful and go very slowly with the sanding so this doesn't happen. Well, at least now I know. I then sanded the few remaining ones, being extra careful not to go through it. And then I started cutting the trims to dimension. And here is another wood I haven't shown yet. This is Sequoia Burl. And it looks kind of dull right now, but once I applied the finish, it really made the color pop. And this is probably the best looking one. I intentionally made these trim as thin as possible as to not distract from the main attraction, which is the beauty of these pieces of veneer. Before I could glue these in place, I had to make something to hang these using this special T-shaped router bit. I made myself a quick little template to guide the router, and using this I routed a slot in the center of each side so that these could be hung in any direction, depending on what your preference is for the pattern. Also, I laser engraved my logo as well as the name of the wood species, both in French and English. And at that time, I could finally glue the trims. I didn't really have anything to clamp these, so I just used some masking tape, but that's pretty strong enough. There isn't really a need to clamp, it just needs to be held in place whilst the glue dries. Now I put them aside and I focused on the three remaining pieces, which are gonna be something different. Back when I cut the trims in walnut, I also cut some of these larger pieces. I cut a groove in them also and trimmed them at 45 degrees. And by now I think you can guess what I'm making as well. These are going to be kitchen trays. And I think this can be a much better product because it really serves a good function and it's always something useful to have around the house. And I think it's a guaranteed successful gift. I mean, you can't. Why would you be mad receiving a kitchen tray? It's always useful. And I think these ones are pretty unique, even though the design is pretty simple. The wood that was used to make them, in this case walnut burl, is what really brings the value into this item. I made a quick template here to route out the hole a little more properly. Now that the shape was routed, I could then add a round over to the edges so it's nice to the finger. And I did that also on the long edges so the tray looks a little bit better. Then I sanded all the inside faces I couldn't reach after it was assembled, as well as the handle. And now I could then start gluing it and assemble the trays together. And now I could use a ratchet strap to glue them together instead of just painter's tape. That worked out really well. At that point I was tempted to cut corners and leave it at that, just a simple miter joint. But I wanted this tray to last forever, so I thought I'm gonna literally cut corners. And so I added these splines here to reinforce the joint. Even though the joint itself could have been strong enough, now I'm sure it will be perfectly strong and hold up many years. Now those trays were basically done, I just sanded the exterior and then wiping it with a cloth and blowing it with compressed air to remove most of the dust. And then I got dressed up and started cooking the finish I'm gonna use for this. This is a 3-part varnish, very good quality, specially made for a kitchen countertops. So I think this will be perfect for these trays. I'm recording this step from a bit far away from outside the room because I'm recording with my phone and I don't want to get it covered in varnish basically because this varnish is very volatile since it's applied with the spray gun. But here's what it looks like after the first coat. Once the first coat is dry, I do a very light sanding to remove the bumps, then spraying it again to remove all the dust. And then the next coats are applied using the same process. I just didn't record it because that's boring. Back to work on the wall art, I had to sand the edges of the trim and I started by hand, but I quickly realized that would take way too long and be way too tiring, so luckily I found an old vibrating sanding machine that worked pretty well for this. Still had to do a little bit of hand sanding to knock down the sharp edges, and then prepping it for the finish again, wiping it off and blowing it off to remove all of the small dust particles. This time I'm gonna use a natural oil finish called Odie's Oil. This is a finish that looks so good, but I tend not to use it on pieces of furniture because although it looks really, really well and makes the grain really pop, it's not very good at protecting from liquid spills and all that. So for a piece of furniture, I'm not very comfortable using this. But since these things will go on the wall, like sort of paintings, spill resistance is not very important. What's more important is that they look really, really good. And since this is an oil and it penetrates deep into the wood, it really, really makes the finish looks amazing and really pop. What's super amazing about this finish also is that it is super easy to apply. You just wipe it on, wait an hour, and then wipe all of the excess off and do a little buffing, and that's it. These are now completed and they are super easy to install. Just a simple drywall screw can do the job. And here we are. Like I said earlier, all of these will be available on my website. Most of these will be around 200 bucks. I have some other pieces of veneer left and I'm not sure at this point if I should be making more kitchen trays or more of these wall art. Let me know in the comments which one do you prefer and which one makes more sense for that kind of money. I did say in the beginning these sheets of veneer were just a few bucks each, but when you add in the cost of the walnut that goes around it, the MDF, and especially the labor, I think that's a pretty reasonable price. I know it sounds like a lot for what it is, but at the end of the day, I still have to make some kind of profit from these. I would like to be able to continue making crazy videos for as long as I can and keep having them sponsor free and AI bullshit free, but it's getting harder and harder for me to satisfy the almighty algorithm. I know this isn't a very elaborate video compared to some of the stuff I made before on my YouTube channel, but this is a good way to finance big projects I have coming up. And if you like my work on YouTube and want to support my videos, the crazy ones, please consider going to my website to check these out and consider purchasing one.